Hello everyone, welcome to Practical GCP. Today I would like to talk about, in my view, how you could build a sustainable data ecosystem on Google Cloud. So we've got a quite packed agenda, so I think we'll start with the biggest challenge, in my view, in today's data landscape. And I'll start with your typical day, or my typical day, what it might look like. You might find this very interesting. And the meaning of these actual points, right, is not just about talking about what we encounter on a daily basis with the issues. It's also about understanding what they actually mean. And what kind of tooling do we need, especially in the Google Cloud ecosystem, to help us to resolve or kind of help us to solve these challenges? And I would like to show you then a view of what the data ecosystem may look like using those tools. The sustainable part is really, really key, and I want to focus quite a bit of time to discuss that with you. And at the end, we'll revisit some of these top issues we mentioned or discussed throughout this video today, and also let's summarize what we've learned. Okay. So the biggest challenge in today's landscape. So to be honest, I think it can be summarized in this kind of 3 points. It's not 10 years ago, well, it's not 5 years ago even. So you typically get this issue that you get lots of data. Let's assume, and to be fair, there's a lot more tools made available to most companies. You may have got your data ingestion sorted mostly, yeah? But the issue is here that we have loads of data, and then the business has become more demanding, a lot more demanding. There's lots of raw data, there's loads of use cases from reporting, from analytics operations, which has been trending in the last, I would say 3 to 4 years. And then, of course, AI and ML. But we typically don't have a lot of time, or the business doesn't really have a lot of time because the competition is pretty tough these days. So how do we solve this kind of problem, right? And if you don't actually think about it, most likely we'll end up with a mess. So let's get to the interesting part. I think a lot of you may be able to relate, and this is what your or what my typical day might look like, regardless of whether you are the data producer, you're the platform team, or you're the data consumer. So you might get to see like, okay, who owns this piece of data? Yeah? And, oh, I don't want to wait. I needed this stuff yesterday. Sounds familiar? Or I can do this myself. I've done this 1,000,000 times in my previous job. Okay, but how about, do you have the tools? Who's going to do it? Or how do I get access to this data? This is probably the most accessed. Unless you have a very mature system, this question very often gets asked in most companies. The quality on the data is so bad, can't someone just fix it? But usually what you get is just someone saying the data is bad, but not able to quantify or explain what does it actually mean the data quality is bad. Or you have a table, you want to explain on the table on the database, but you don't know what does this table do, or what does this column even mean. But people trying to kind of just find data through all of these data assets and try to build something on top of that. What do you think you're going to get out of that? What if there's some data is sensitive? How do you even know? Are these properly labeled? Or if you have something, you look at a column on a data, on a table, you don't know where it comes from. There could be some financial data in there. How do you prove it? So these are all the questions many of us face on a daily basis, but they're not very easy to resolve. Okay, what do they actually mean then? In order to understand how to resolve these issues, we need to understand what kind of problem or root cause we're referring to. So I've labeled all of these questions into a category of the issue that in what I believe are the root cause of why someone is asking these kind of issues. If you don't have these tools, or you don't have this operating model or definition defined, and then that's why the data producer or consumer keep asking these questions. So if you look at who owns this piece of data issue, that's typically a data ownership problem, right? Without someone owning the data, it is very hard for anyone to actually find out who owns it. Yeah. So the issues on I don't want to wait, I need this yesterday question is typically highlighting there's an issue with agility on the development. I can do this myself. I've done this in my previous job many times. Is referring to an operating model, typically not very clearly defined. It's because it clearly looks like someone thinks they can do the job, but they have not been given the tool to do the job. How about getting access to the data? That means there is no standard way defined or shared or communicated on how to share your data. And the quality on the data, if it's so bad, if someone can't fix it or you don't know who's going to fix it, especially when things are not explained in a way that is tangible or measurable, you could be talking about a data quality problem or a tooling or some sort of reporting that you need to measure the data quality in a way that people can actually understand. On questions like what does this table do or what does this column mean is typically a data cataloging issue, right? Data cataloging is something really key that are required to define the meaning of your data or how the data should be consumed. Without this, it could be just a guessing work. How do I know if this data is sensitive? This is what everybody needs as core part of the data governance. And all of us need some sort of way to manage sensitive data, such as detection, tagging, and also checking how accurately they're tagged or if these has been accessed. The question on where is something come from typically refers to lineage. And especially in a lot of the use cases, stakeholders demand for you to prove where it comes from. Having some sort of visualization to highlight where something comes from is very, very key, and it's part of the core functionality of data lineage. Okay, so what sort of tooling are we talking about that might help you with these challenges in the Google Cloud ecosystem? So I broke this down into 4 different categories that kind of correlates to all of these points, and we were talking about in a previous slide that can help you to solve this kind of problem. BigQuery is the heart of all of these things we're referring to in kind of managing our data access, data ownership, and this is the center of everything. And that is where our data is stored. Whether your data is on BigQuery or off BigQuery, such as it could be on the GCS bucket, there are various ways of data federation, but you can actually use BigQuery to manage the data in different shapes and forms. It's not just limited to structured data. Analytics Hub is something, I've got a different video. If you look at the link above, if you don't know what it is, I highly recommend for you to have a look at the Analytics Hub and how it can help you in your organization to manage your data ownership and sharing via something called Exchange or listing. DataPlaque is a collection of many tools, primarily covers data quality. Again, I have another video on the link, is something I felt is really important and very interesting on some automated ways. It's actually quite a low-hanging fruit to get data quality out of all of your data asset on BigQuery using the automatic data quality scan. It's not actually that complicated. But also it offers tools on data catalog and also has automatic ways to display lineage on your data if you ever actually queried some data. It's quite a recent addition on BigQuery on the lineage part. So taxonomy and policy tags, this is really important. It's the key things that when you use BigQuery, those can be used to tag, right? To tag your sensitive data, and then so others can see whether what this means, right? Which taxonomy it belongs to and what kind of policy tag it is. What are the tiers of how sensitive that data is? So this really guides the correct use of sensitive data. And also, there's other tools that helps you to detect those sensitive data, even in a completely automated way, that you can cross-reference on the data that people are tagging or the system tagging with best effort. Okay, so let's have a view of the entire data ecosystem with those tooling taking into account. So if you look at this, on the right-hand side, we still have these use cases, but the whole ecosystem is based on you have a lot of raw data, right? And you have different the teams that own in different domains. So one of the key things here is these teams, regardless of tooling they choose, it can be DBT, it can be just the cloud native tools, it can be non-cloud native tools. But whichever the tooling this team decide to choose, obviously you would have some sort of governance model, something you want to optimize, probably through a platform team, to choose a collection of tools that is most optimum that for different teams based on their skill set to develop, their transformation process, their modeling process. But it is not that relevant. The key thing is each team will have their own selected tools that is best for them. So those teams will then produce data asset. Those data asset can again live in BigQuery after all the transformations or the trainings, right? So you could be talking about just the data models after being cleaned up. You could talking about the data models that are actually at the back of training through Vertex AI, right? You could be talking about LLM data models that through very complex, you could store data that is made available for people to use, for example, the vector search on, right, with embeddings. So those are all the different things that you can actually store in BigQuery. And then this is the key part. Analytics Hub is the center of data sharing and ownership. So this is really important because in my view, in the organization, especially the large ones, you must have clear boundaries. So these boundaries are key for your data quality or for the ownership for a lot of other things on top of it. So the Analytics Hub, again, as I mentioned, there's another video I really recommend you go and have a look at that, which contains exchanges and listings. Those things are the building blocks where you can have owners self-service the data publication process and also sharing with other consumers. So ultimately, these teams, different domain owners, you all own their own data. And then they will then expose their data in the exchanges or listings. Then they can actually consume each other's data, but all of the data asset would have owners. Then subsequently, you can see because of the you have all of the teams owning their tools, they can all build things, and everything has ownerships. You can power many different kind of things in parallel, which allows you to scale a large data ecosystem. So whether that's reporting or analytics operations or AI or ML, it is irrelevant because you can have the domain expert, have the tools they have the data they have the owners of the data they have, all consuming others' data owned by different teams to achieve what they need to achieve in their business domain. Well, in that case, you might be saying, isn't this just a data mesh? Well, you can call it that, or you can call it just a bunch of little data warehouses owned by different people with clear model. So the point here is not about the buzzword or the wording. It is about how do you build something that is that is scalable, right? That has a clear operational ownership model using the right technology and tooling. But this is the most important part that I'm going to add on top of this. You can call it data mesh, that's your choice. You can call it data fabric, you can call it warehouse. In my view, is irrelevant. It's not about the methodologies or the wording. It is about how do you build something that is scalable and sustainable. So on the sustainable part, the first one is data certification. This is something I've learned over the years of seeing different companies doing this thing. They gave it a name called data certification, but all it means is a set of rules, right? A set of rules that you must follow, or you must it's a set of policies you must follow to ensure your data is good, right? It's in a good state. So this gives you the building blocks for it to be scaled in a sustainable way. For example, this is not exclusive, but you see things like data must be catalog, right? That's kind of one requirement. You get a rubber stamp if you have the catalog data. And all table callers must have their data quality measured. So data plug, data quality scan can do this sort of thing. But it is very important to have some definition of, what does a measurable data quality mean, right? It's not just about you saying this data is, some teams think I just run assertions, my data never break, but you can't prove it, right? It doesn't give you any way to measure your data is not broken. And we're all humans. Your stuff, it doesn't matter how good you are, things will break. It just means when it does break, people don't even know what it means or how badly it's been broken. So the data quality checks will really ensure that we don't actually, it's not objective, right? It's all objective. It's all data to using tools to help us to understand what does it actually mean based on the rules we set. So, for example, you must also have sensitive data tags, or you must use analytic hub. So some people just decide I'm going to share this BigQuery table using whatever way I choose. No, that's not acceptable, because in that case, if you really want to do it, somehow people got access to it, right? You can do it, but your data is not certified, right? Then you have a rubber stamp that is red. Okay, but how do you know? How do you make sure that how do you get this, make this work, right? This is one of the things I see. Always teams are asking, okay, you have all of these methodologies, it's all good, all technology. What if people don't do it, right? This is where it comes into the observability. You must observe how well the solution is adopted. This is just my view, it's my experience and my ideas, but whether it works for you or not, it is based on the measurement. So some of these key things I put in here that you can see. So for example, the lineage can show, right? Let's say you have data lineage. In this case, the lineage can show critical reporting operations that depending on some uncertified data source. This is a really interesting one because many of my colleagues and friends are complaining, look, if you do data mesh or if you just give people the power to do whatever they do, even their owners, but like they don't certify the data, they just share with other people anyways. Okay, fine, they can do that, but you visualize it, right? In a data lineage, you show, you label anything that is not certified as red. Yeah. So when you have a critical reporting system or operations, depending on a red box, you make that really visible so everyone knows next time when this thing breaks, this is exactly what the root cause is. So there's no pointing fingers. It's just basically facts, right? Everyone knows this is the model. You can follow it. You don't have to follow it, but this is the cause. Remember what I said earlier, on the certification, there must be owners. When you have this thing, immediately triggers the question on who is the owner again, then you fall back to the certification process. It's not like we can't make mistakes, but when we do make those kind of mistakes, we need to communicate these kind of things in a very objective way that is measured. So that's why the reporting is very important. You could have other things such as reports shows the exchange list that does not have owners, right? Those are red flags again. Why is this important? Because if you don't have owners, right? Again, it's not certified, but the problem it's going to cause is when something is broken, you don't know who to contact. There's no channels to contact the team because there isn't an owner. It could be one person just because they think they're skilled. Maybe they are, right? But they're on holiday for 2 weeks. Then the owner, for example, certification, you must have a team owning it, yeah, or a domain of group of members owning it. It cannot be the single person because that's a single point of failure. If that's critical path, again, is very risky again. The reporting shows data quality drift is a very interesting thing, because if you have, again, critical system depending on the data, let's say is broken. People always say things are broken, right? But how do you measure things? How do you know since when it's been broken? So this is where the data quality drift really matters. So if you can see how many days things have been broken in exactly what way, right? I'll give you an example, because you can watch the data quality video on Dataplex I've created. But a typical example can be a single column has, let's say, before it was all unique, yeah, everything was unique. But suddenly, 3 days ago, the team only started introducing duplicates because they're missing some checks, right? This means the data quality score will drop from 100% into some like 97%, right? Before things get too bad, you can already capture it and start fixing the problem. So this is why the measured data quality is really, really important. But keep in mind, these are not just reports. Once you have the data, you're observing them, which means you're alert on these things, right? And then you can define SLAs on them. This is really amazing. And you can also link the things to the cost, because which could also come into a problem. This is to basically directly address another question people often say, look, these are all the best practice. Everyone knows don't do a select star on BigQuery, but there's always team doing it. Fine. You look at the cost. Some teams' cost is low, some teams' cost is high. But you don't judge based on the cost itself, because some team just cost more because they're doing more work, right? But you can find the things that, what is your definition of best practice? Select star is bad practice. Then you put that as some sort of scoring system and say, look, if someone is using a lot of select star on large tables, it means it's going to cost you a lot of money. Then you visualize this again. Then it's easy to flush all these issues, right? Okay, now let's have a look at to revisit our top issues and how what we just discussed or learned and can resolve these issues. Start from number 1 again. Who owns this piece of data? You can look at Analytics Hub. The answer of that question could be, look, go to Analytics Hub Exchange and Listings. They're clear owners of those things. Go and contact them, right? So I do not want to wait. I need to do this yesterday. The squad already have the tools. They can develop that themselves. You don't have to wait. Go ahead, right? So I can do this myself. I've done this in my previous job many times. Again, each squad have their own tools and team as well. So they can actually, again, develop this themselves. How do I get access to this data? Analytics Hub, again, it is a self-service tool. You go and request someone to invite you to be a subscriber of the data asset. Then you basically create a linked data set, job done. Quality on this data is so bad, can't someone just fix it? Again, Dataplex quality scan with data quality report would tell you exactly why it's bad. So it's not their words against mine, right? We have an objective view of what is the issue. Let's address it together. Okay, what does this table do? What does column mean? Data should be clearly cataloged because as part of the certification process. So people shouldn't be asking these kind of questions. If they do, it probably means the catalog needs to be improved. And what it used to be there before may not have a glossary. Then you might need to explain what this glossary means in what context. And how do I know if this data is sensitive? Data can be tagged, and very often best effort. But then you can have the organizational thing, such as the DLP solution that automatically checks everything. Then you cross-reference with, if you use a tuned version of DLP to tag your data lake automatically versus the data models are tagged manually, then you can cross-check to see where the risks are, right? If you want to enforce your data, you can also use it. You can also enforce by enforcing the tags. Okay, where does this column come from and how do you prove it? Again, back to the lineage. Especially as I mentioned in the previous page, if you have a uncertified data source, label them as red. In the lineage, you can see critical systems depending on red boxes. That would be your problem. It's very easy to trace down the problem and contacting the right teams to resolve them. Okay, that's everything I wanted to show you guys today. I think this is really important, and in summary, I think a good ecosystem is the one that can both scale, right, and also remain sustainable. This is really important, and it's not just about having something that you just put some stuff in there and it scales, you just leave it running by itself. No, we must also think about address these concerns, these everyday questions people are asking. Have they actually resolved them, right? Is our ecosystem actually sustainable? Don't just on the number 2 is, do not plan how do you create your data ecosystem just with buzzwords. You hear everyone does data mesh. Okay, let's just follow the framework, do everything what the data mesh says. Decentralized data, everyone just does their own things. It will be a disaster, right? It is really important to not just stick to the buzzword, but not just do high level thinking either. Technology is key, as I mentioned in here. There's tools to help you to solve these kind of problems, but it is very important to verify, via such as keep the observability, keep the reporting going, right? To measure how well things are going in a very objective way, right? Again, if we don't have the data to measure in some sort of a dashboard to understand how well something is doing, how well the adoption is going, it will turn into pointing finger and blame games, right? But if you actually look at the data, everyone sees we already defined the owner. We shouldn't have this kind of problem. It just becomes very collaborative, right? Rather than pointing fingers, not blames. Okay, finally, I do want to mention one thing that I would probably say consider third-party tooling on especially the cataloging, certification, and lineage. In my view, Google Cloud as is right now is, it can do cataloging with Dataplex. You can use that as if you find that it's more developer-centric, you can get developer to use this cataloging to catalog stuff, but the user interface is not that friendly. It's not the easiest to use, right? The certification process, there's no such thing as a concept of certification in Google Cloud, not in the data ecosystem. So you can build your own tools to do it, but it's actually quite complicated. There are third-party tools. I'm not going to get into exactly which one because there's quite a lot of them, right? So you can look at the tools does cataloging. A lot of the cataloging tools also does certification and data management. You can use the graphical user interface that does this a lot better to do that in those third-party tools that really, harnessing the data Google Cloud provide. I'll give you an example, right? There are certain tools can, especially the Google Cloud partners, they can harvest the, let's say, if you run any queries on BigQuery, they can grab the information schema logs or all of the BigQuery logs you run, right? And those they can use to generate the lineage. Yeah. So this is what I'm mentioning, certification lineage. And then they can then look at, you can label your data. Let's say if you don't have certain things certified, you can label it as uncertified. Those can be flagged with different colors in the UI. And also in terms of cataloging, you can have your data steward using those tools rather than doing those in Google Cloud, right? So there's different options. You can do all Google Cloud native if you wish, but I think you should be exploring the cataloging, certification, lineage. These, in my view, I believe there's better tools than what Google has right now, right? That's the only thing I want to flag. Okay, I hope that was useful. And I decided to talk about this week because I think this is a really important topic, and it is very important to address these kind of issues by not following the buzz in the industry, but instead thinking about exactly what your problem are, what people are complaining about, map those things into root causes, then use the technology. For example, you can follow the things I proposed it here or I shared it here. This is from my experience. You can have yours. But at the end of the day, those validation process, you can have certification as well, but the validation process has to be through data and through visualization, so a large group of people can actually have a conversation and really understood each other when they're debating about a problem. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.
Go out!